Hi, just checking that everyone can hear me. Welcome to Fireside Chat. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce a really special guest we've got. Welcome, Premier Burt. Thank you very much for joining us here. I'd just like to say, if you want to carry on the conversation, hashtag Ethereal Davos, and we'll keep the conversation going with the Premier, but I know your time is really pressed, so we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. You'll have your own chance to put your questions to the Premier, and we'll see how many we can fit in before it's time for you to go.
Absolutely. Good afternoon to you, Priya. Thank you for doing this. Priya and I are going to rebrand this event. We're going to call it a Mountainside Chat.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused as to where the fireside is. Yeah. So it's fantastic to have you. When I saw you were one of the guests for the events this week, I thought, well, I mean, what is your background in blockchain exactly? So I'm quite interested to know, where did you first discover blockchain? Why are you interested in it?
The interest that I have from blockchain, I guess I can even go on a broader level from a technology perspective, because I have a unique route into politics. And so my route into politics came because I did IT. And how I got involved in my political party was when I actually came back home from university. The party had trouble distributing notices. So I remember I offered to set up their website and a listserv for them, and for those people who do programming, it was on an old mailman program that was running on Perl, and we were setting up these various items. But that's how I actually got involved in politics, because I have a technology background. And so all of my adult life, I've been doing technology. And so when I got into office, it was one of the first weeks, and there was another company who's here in Davos as well, which is a Bermuda company called Hub Culture. And they had actually invited me down to one of their innovation labs that was taking place in Bermuda. And the founder of that organization basically introduced me to this technology. And he said, this is something that I tried to give to the former government. The former government wasn't running with it. You've been in office for a week. Maybe this is something you want to look at. And I examined it some more, and I found it very interesting. And of course, we understand that it was in the middle of a hype cycle. So it was something that we kind of moved very aggressively on.
So Premier Burt, you are the youngest Premier of Bermuda ever. Do you think that's that's part of it? Actually, you're really just tuned into what's happening in technology right now.
I would like to think so, but from the perspective where it is, I think that I'm just very fortunate that I do have a technology background, and it allows me to understand certain things, and it allows me to also see through BS when BS is given. This is the case. You have to learn how to differentiate what is real from what is not real, and so in this particular case and instance, I think that it's certainly a benefit.
So if you have a second, I might throw something out to the room. Let's do a scan on. If we think of a scale, 1 to 5, 1 being my grandmother, and I'm not being ageist, she's just never used the internet in her life, so that's 1. And 5 being someone that, data mines and is really au fait with cryptocurrency and knows everything about blockchain. Hands up who would put themselves, in the upper half, so would say, oh, I'm a 4 or I'm a 5, and I really get this technology. Word of warning, Premier, you are speaking to a very knowledgeable crowd here.
I will make sure that I'm on point.
Yes, and
so they don't call me out.
We will be calling on all of you to explain any very technical points that we might be struggling throughout the session. So what's your vision of how blockchain can factor into Bermuda's future, the finance sector there, and what do you think you can do with it?
Thanks. From the perspective of where we are in Bermuda, Bermuda is an international financial center, and a lot of people do not know. They look at us from the perspective of tourism. But 95% of our foreign exchange earnings actually come from international business. And Bermuda is one of the largest centers of insurance and reinsurance in the world. And so from the perspective of being an international financial center, you have to be looking at making sure that in the future you're not going to be irrelevant as a jurisdiction. And so the opportunity of which we see in blockchain is to ensure that we can have the regulatory environment so that companies want to innovate. Our insurance companies can feel free to innovate, and other companies which may look to come to Bermuda to take advantage of our environment can look to innovate and move forward. Our insurance sector, which is, as I said, the largest provider of foreign exchange into our country, came from the fact that there were not the correct regulatory environments in other places in which to deliver insurance, and there was gaps in insurance. So we filled that gap. However, if we do not modernize our regulations, if we're not looking at what are the trends of the future, then we will become irrelevant as well. And as a leader of a country who wants to make sure there are jobs and opportunities for the people who voted for me, I have to make sure, and it's my responsibility to keep up with those regulations so that we can have companies that come to Bermuda, companies that want to set up in Bermuda. And of course, we're here in the Consensus Lounge, and I just have to give a big shout out to Consensus because they had an event in Bermuda a few months ago. Joe came down and the Consensus team came down, and there's Consensus companies that are actually in Bermuda as well. And so what we're doing is working, the strategy is working, and I sincerely hope that we'll be able to do more.
It's a really challenging area because it's in its infancy, really, this technology, and regulation is a big challenge. You've done a lot in taxation with in regulatory area. Do you just like regulatory challenges, Premier? Is that what this is about?
I was having a conversation with, I think it was Don Tapscott just now, and we were talking about centers of excellence. And I say Bermuda will be happy to be a regulatory center of excellence because the truth is that's what we do well. That's what we specialize in. And it's about making sure that we work with industry to craft regulations that work for industry to allow industry to be successful.
Can you see yourself working with other nations? Does it need to be at an international level?
From our perspective, we have no issue working at international level. We were actually one of the countries that were invited by the OECD. That's the actual reason why I'm at the World Economic Forum, but we were invited by the OECD to be at their blockchain event that they had at their headquarters in September. We spoke about what it is that we're doing, and we welcome collaboration. So we're looking to also try to have a center of excellence in Bermuda from the regulatory perspective, dealing with the OECD. From our perspective, we want companies to headquarter in Bermuda, but it helps for companies that may be headquartered in Bermuda to be better accepted globally if there are more consistent regulations worldwide.
What are some of the interesting things you've seen in this field? It's very strange for myself as the premier of the country because typically premiers don't keep portfolios. But I have, and I used to be Minister of Finance. I'm very happily no longer Minister of Finance. So I don't have to deal with all the stress and pressure that's going to come from delivering a budget next month. However, I have kept the portfolio of information technologies and the digital economy in Bermuda. And that means that a lot of the companies that are looking to set up after they've been through the screening process and spoken to people are the people who give their demonstrations to me. And I think the most fascinating one is an actual Bermuda company that is starting to hire people inside of our country, which makes it real for the people in Bermuda. And it's called BitCarbon. And they are looking to commoditize diamonds. And so they have a way where they can put diamonds in this little storage container, which has a 2048-bit encryption NFC thing that can be stored inside of custody places, and it will allow people to actually now use their diamonds and borrow against them and use them as money and to hold them as assets. Before, of course, if you wanted to use a part of a diamond, you couldn't really cut it in half because then you would, cut its value into probably about 5% of what it was before. But now you actually can hold this type of asset and then use it. And those are the types of things that blockchain enables. And it's so amazing every single time that people come into the office who will come and say, these are the ideas which we have, these are the plans we have, we're blown away. And the applications are endless. And I think that, companies, certainly Consensus recognizes that, and others, that it's far bigger than just, cryptocurrencies and all the rest. It will change the way the world works. And we want to make sure that we can play a part of that future. So you've had an interesting experience even at last year's Davos. I feel like you're really a cheerleader for blockchain. So tell us about what happened last year at Davos for those of us that might not know.
Thanks. I would say that it was funny because I wasn't actually even at the last minute I was going to cancel my trip because I was not invited to the official World Economic Forum event, and it was traveling any time that you travel when you are the leader of a country because things don't normally work as well when you are away than when you are there. And so I have a young family, so it was just kind of like I didn't necessarily want to go, but I came. And the purpose of coming, of course, was we had just embarked on, we were about 3 months into our blockchain journey. We had set up a number of task forces that were looking at regulation and business development. So we came out here to learn more. And on the final night, We were at a global blockchain business council event, and the Minister of National Security, who then had responsibility for the digital economy, had invited people. He got very excited, and he invited people on a whim. He said, we want to build the future of the best state for blockchain or distributed technologies in Bermuda, and if you want to be a part of building this environment with us, you can get on a plane and meet us in Bermuda next week. And as we were leaving, we left on Friday, and as we were on Saturday, we started getting emails of people who were actually coming. So now all of a sudden, this came from a little bit of exuberance and telling people to come to all of a sudden, oh, we might have to plan for this. So it was funny because we literally had to cancel what most of the people in government were doing that week, and we literally had everyone. So we had people from the Attorney General's chambers, we had people from the Ministry of Finance, we had people from financial crime, we had people everywhere at the Bermuda Monetary Authority, and they were literally whiteboarding what the future would look like. But out of there came the regulations of which we introduced, came the digital asset issuance legislation that we introduced, came the Digital Asset Business Act, which licensed providers in the space, came the Digital Asset Banking Act of which we did modification to our banking licenses to provide for companies that would want to do banking and for digital assets. So we did a lot of things that came out of there. So I tell people it was the best $25,000 the government of Bermuda has ever spent.
Well, Premier, we all look forward to our invitation following this year's trip at Davos, I think. Let's move on. I actually wondered if we could focus a little bit on cryptocurrencies, actually. You made quite an astute prediction last year. Someone asked you what you thought Bitcoin would be worth a year on later. I think you were pretty close, right?
I said 4,000.
That's impressive. I'm going to have to get that verified somehow because
it is on YouTube. I'll send you the link.
Okay, good. Yes, please do. Hashtag Ethereal Davos, please.
I remember that people were tweeting me in a very bad fashion and cursing me. Now, they'll now call me the sage.
You created the confidence crisis. You actually started this. That's what I think. So, in terms of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, where do you stand in terms of what you think is ultimately going to be the most useful aspect of it?
Got you. Well, without question, we're here at the home of Ethereum, and Ethereum is an example of as you advance when it comes to digital currencies and the type of things in which you can do. But also, I had said earlier about a Bermuda company called Hub Culture, and I have to give a shout out to Stan Stolniker, founder of Ven, another, as he will say, the world's first digital currency. But from the perspective of where we are, I look at it when it comes to cryptocurrencies, blockchain in general, we're just at the very beginning. And I don't think that anyone, though I could make a prediction last year and guess and be right, we don't know what this is going to look like in 2 to 3 years. There are innovators that are building things. There are innovators that are coming up with ideas. There are innovators that are saying, look at all the different types of things of which we can do. And I think that it's only going to be up to the limits of the imagination of the entrepreneurs of the world. And as we've now seen, there's been entrepreneurs that have been able to create all types of things. Like when the guy came into my office with this little thing with these diamonds, I just could not actually believe it. And it's these type of things which we're going to see, which is going to fundamentally change the way in which the world works.
Well, you're really ruining my next question because I just thought you're so good at predictions, I was going to try and eke another one out of you. How far away do you think is the widespread use of blockchain? Are we talking years? Are we talking decades? Well,
we're probably talking about a decade, I think. I mean, if you look at, and the way in which I like to put it, because people are like, oh, well, look, Bitcoin's dropped and the crypto markets are bad and it's crypto winter and see was all hype and it's never going to come. The example I like to say is, in 1999 at the dot-com crash, what happened 20 years later, where we are now, or 19 years later. The fact is that these things will happen and they'll go in cycles. But 20 years on, you cannot imagine the world without the internet. And there will come a time where you cannot imagine the world without blockchain. You will look and say, I cannot believe that we used to actually rely on third parties to verify things, and we could have used systems that verify them automatically ourselves. And so from that perspective, I think that we're probably going to be, I would say, probably a decade out.
Did the crypto crash, obviously you predicted it, but did it worry you in any way whatsoever?
No, it didn't worry me, because the way that I look at it is that, of course, there is that hype cycle, but it allows you to see the companies that are actually serious in the space. And it shakes out the ones that aren't serious, and you can actually see the ones that are serious. And so from that perspective, we it's not a question of we welcome it, but it's shown us the companies that can make it through those times. And we have to remember the companies that made it through the dot-com bust the last time around were, Amazon. They're still here, and they are successful. So the strong companies will survive, and hopefully the strong companies will be the ones to leading the future.
So I would say there have been two really noticeable topics at WEF in Davos this week. Definitely, I think blockchain is one of them. And another one is environmental issues. Considering the challenges of mining and the carbon footprint that leaves, do you think the development of blockchain technology can happen in a sustainable environmental way?
Yes, I do. And the reason why I do is because I know that the persons that are passionate about a distributed future are also passionate about the planet. And they are going to design better blockchains, or they're going to design modifications, or I think the correct word is forks or other things like that. Did I get that right? Did I? I did? Okay. That will actually make the technology better. And so we know that Bitcoin, of course, originally in the challenges there, but Ethereum will use less, and there'll be other things in the future that will use even less. So I think that, and the best analogy that I give is that, the old refrigerators were very energy inefficient. That didn't stop us from using them. We just made them more efficient. And I think what you'll see is that we'll just make things more efficient so they work better.
So really, human ingenuity is the solution to this particular challenge.
Absolutely. I remember when I was excited and I got my first computer, and the modem was advertised at 2400 BPS way back in 1992. I mean, the fact is that technology will continue to get better, and as time goes on, those problems will be ones that will be fixed.
Okay, so we are at the question and answer time, and I'd love to have some questions from the audience. I will also throw in that if anyone wants to try and rise to this challenge, explain blockchain in 10 seconds without using any jargon, I will give you a BBC mug. So we'll throw that out there too. So, gentlemen over here, let's have your question.
I applaud you and your open mind.
Sorry, one moment. I'm going to hand you over my mic.
I have a mic too. Oh, great. There you go. That's even easier.
Fantastic.
Is this on? I'm James Haft. How are you? I applaud you on your open-minded stance and your desire to look at the future and with an open mind. So thank you. What are the problems that you're focusing on solving? What do you think are the issues that you can debottleneck and take the friction out to help transactions and value and flow?
Thank you. The main issue and the main benefit of which I see, and it's kind of the way that you can relate it to the everyday people inside of Bermuda, it's a challenge. We have a country, 65,000 people, but as an international financial center that always has scrutiny, we have some of the most complex and strong money laundering rules that exist. So even Bermudians who work for the government, who everyone knows where they get their money from, who've never moved, who live in the same house, every year they have to submit a copy of their passport. They have to do all those type of things. That adds an additional regulatory burden on top of regular citizens. It adds an additional regulatory burden on companies, expenses. It makes your economy less efficient. What we want to do is to make sure we use blockchain to fix that. And that means from the level and what the technology of which it enables, blockchain not required, but it makes it a little bit better, insofar as when it talks about a national digital identity that is based on blockchain that gives people the control over whom they can give their access to. Now, what happened is that we had planned on going on that project. We've run into some bumps, so now we've transferred it to look at it from a different perspective, because we still want to solve the problem. But the thing is, we may not know the technology that will be best to solve it. However, we can look at it from the government perspective, that the government is now going to introduce what we're going to call a Digital Identity Issuance Act. And what it will allow is that companies that want to issue digital identities can have those, will have a suite of regulations that they have to follow. But once they follow those, the government will be able to attest to say that they have gone through the process, they can have they have the security that's required and everything else. So that is another way of solving the problem. But to get back to the original premise, it is those type of things where there is friction that exists, where there are challenges in everyday lives and things that don't need to be done. If you have a system of trust that you can verify that can't be changed and you know it's there, we can make efficiencies in that way. And I think that our citizens will certainly see benefit from that.
Can I ask one more?
Great.
Quickly.
We have time for a follow-up. Go on.
So, one of the issues for Bermuda is that you have a legacy industry that's regulated and respected, and your brand is excellent, right? You have respect and trust globally. Some of the other nations around you are interested in gaining your position in the new economy. So how are you handling the juxtaposition and the friction between the legacy industry and the trust and the new industry and the growth?
That is an excellent question. The one thing that we say about Bermuda is that we have never been a quantity jurisdiction. We're all about quality. And so from that perspective, we put in a suite of regulations. We were the first, but I can assure you that our regulation is very strict. And there are a lot of companies that say, oh, we like regulation. And then when they see the regulation of which we put into place, they're like, okay, we're going to go somewhere else. No, it's the truth. For us, that is okay because we want quality. So we're not trying to compete to have the most hype. We're not trying to compete to be the ones that have the most companies. We're trying to compete to have the highest quality companies that will have the longest term, term of running. Long-term companies. And so from that perspective, we think that we've got it right. Our Bermuda Monetary Authority, which is our financial services regulator, we only have one. They are the ones that are the guardians of our reputation internationally, and they are the ones who were the main protagonists for the Digital Asset Business Act, and it is very strict. And so if you don't bypass their smell test, then you're not going to get into our jurisdiction. And that makes the old industry comfortable. But we also have to remember that the old industry, especially in an industry like insurance, where we know there are massive inefficiencies, recognize this, and even before we had put things in place, there are many of our insurance companies that are investing in things inside of blockchain to make sure that they do not get out-innovated by other companies or other jurisdictions.
Thank you for your question. Anyone else? This gentleman over here. And anyone else? Right, so this gentleman here, and when he's finished his questions, if we could pass the mic to the lady at the front here.
Hi, Stan. So nice to see you, Premier. We've been a Bermuda company since 2006, and I just want to first say thank you very much for the leadership that you've shown in Bermuda. It has completely transformed, I think, our impression and the tech world's impression of Bermuda, and it's really amazing to see the results. So, first of all, thank you. I'd like to just ask you about ecosystem. So, one of the things that we've discovered, having worked in Bermuda for so long and investing in the country, the need for ecosystem is really, really strong. And Bermuda, I think, before 2017, had a couple of tech companies. Today, there's like 50 tech companies that are based there. So I'm curious about what you would like to see in terms of building ecosystem in Bermuda. How can other companies who have maybe operations elsewhere in the world do something in Bermuda that would help to grow that ecosystem? And then finally, I'd just like to say the new digital identity thing that you're doing, I think is going to be massive. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia was talking about exportable digital identities. But the thing is for many of these countries, there are issues around exporting, say, an Ethiopian identity to Kenya or to South Africa. But Bermuda has this incredible advantage and opportunity because it's so neutral in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 90 minutes from New York, that I really think that the ability for you guys to export data vaults and digital identities around the world could actually kind of jump over like more local political considerations to make you guys an issuer of digital global identities. So just food for thought.
Okay, so digital ecosystem of Bermuda and then digital identity.
Thank you. I thank you for that, Stan, regarding digital identities. And the one thing that I have to say is, unfortunately, I do have to leave it a very hard stop at 3:15. So if you have any questions about Bermuda, my chief FinTech advisor is right over there. He's filming, and he can answer any questions. Dennis is over there. What I do want to say on the ecosystem side is that we're blessed because of us being a financial services jurisdiction. We have a lot of that ecosystem there already. We have well-trained people that understand finance, et cetera. The challenge and service providers as well, whether it be on the legal side, whether it be on the accounting side, whether it be on the banking side, and the regulatory side. The challenge, of course, which we have is technologists themselves. And from that perspective, we have a shortage. But what we have are the FinTech work permits where we allow companies that establish in Bermuda to bring talent to Bermuda in order to go ahead. What we expect from companies is to work with us to develop talent. So we have a FinTech development fund that we encourage encourage companies who move to Bermuda, who set up to Bermuda, to contribute to that fund so we can fund scholarships and education programs for our young people. At the same point in time, we do have education programs that is running out of our FinTech initiative, where we're doing online courses and partnering with various organizations to put those on. And I know that we're actually working with Hub Culture as well to do some of those items. Actually, Consensus as well with Consensus Academy. So there's work that's certainly going on in that area. It's continuing to develop the infrastructure. So companies that are looking to come to Bermuda, if you are interested, I hope that you have a little bit of corporate social responsibility and want to make sure that you can help to educate the populace, the local populace, on what the opportunities are.
We take a question.
My name is Norma Graham. I'm from the U.S. and I run a cybersecurity practice in FinTech. And in the U.S., we're having the same struggle on what should the regulatory structure be in an appropriate way. And we're seeing our agencies sort of fuss with each other. So you are doing an amazing job. Have you? Maybe you are, but are you working? Could we come up with a partnership between U.S. and Bermuda, between the regulatory structures? Can we make sure that cybersecurity is embedded in when we talk about FinTech? We have sandboxes, but it seems like it'd be a great partnership that we could work on together.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. It's certainly something that we can speak about. I know that our regulator works very closely with the U.S. regulatory agencies. From the Bermuda perspective, when at least it comes to risk, there's only 2 countries in the world that have regulatory equivalents with both the European Union and the United States, and that's Bermuda and the country in which we're in right now, Switzerland. And so when people talk about competitors and competing jurisdictions, I only consider one country our competitor, and that's the country we're in right now, Switzerland. So Bermuda has a very high standard. We work with U.S. regulatory agencies right now, and I'm happy to continue that development.
Let's do more.
Absolutely, we can. Cybersecurity is a big thing, though, and that's a big theme from the Bermuda perspective. I know that we're going to be kind of a leader, and we're going to be kind of a leader because our insurance industry is one of the first places that's actually providing cybersecurity cover. And when you're doing this cybersecurity cover, that means that you have a responsibility to look to reduce your risk as well. And so they're putting in place and policies and processes. And we also have a national cybersecurity strategy that's not run out of the tech part of the government. It's run out of the national security part of the government.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
next question. Did someone here want you first, and then the lady over there, please? If we could pass the mic round.
Thank you. My name is Kurt. I'm with Regify. Regify enables secure and verifiable e-transactions. We have done it for the last 10 years on DLT without blockchain. So efficiency is important to our customers. The question to you, you have been referring to the insurance industry. Can you explain specifically how reinsurers benefit from your new legislation?
I cannot necessarily explain how reinsurance companies would benefit from our legislation because reinsurance is a different model than insurance, and a lot of the insurtech stuff which we see are basically looking at how you can sell insurance more cheaply and more efficiently to a wider variety using data and other things. So from that perspective, that's on the insurtech play. I really can't answer the question how distributed ledger technologies will assist on the reinsurance side. So you've managed to stump me. I can't give away. I can't
that
give.
doesn't happen often.
Exactly. I can't give away a BBC mug, but I'll give you my flag pin for stumping me.
Right, next question, please.
Thank you. My name is Alexandra Levin Kramer. I'm a U.S. attorney focusing on the blockchain industry. And usually the first question I'm asked by clients is which jurisdiction? Unfortunately, I do have to sometimes turn them away from the States and other times point them to other jurisdictions. And I will say that overall, there seems to be a lot of success among island nations, including Malta, Gibraltar, and others in this space. I'm wondering if you're aware of the situation in Puerto Rico, actually, in terms of the industry being seen as coming from the outside to almost manipulate local populations rather than as a positive economic redevelopment. Could you comment on how you balance that in Bermuda?
Absolutely. And I think that's just at the basis, and you heard me speak earlier about the fact that we expect companies to have that type of responsibility. What I would say is that again, going back to the fact that Bermuda has never been about quantity, Bermuda's been about quality. It's very difficult to get into Bermuda. You have to pass the tests. You can't have anything that's in your background because the BMA just won't let you pass. But once you are there and once you have established your license, you can go ahead and operate in that fashion. We're not going to expect that there's going to be I don't want to say a large number of companies, but we're not going to expect there's going to be a huge rush of people inside because our ecosystem just can't handle it. I mean, we have 65,000 people. The largest our workforce has ever been, or our population's been, is more like 70,000 people, and that created a strain. Now time's gone on, we're certainly going to have to get bigger, but we're not talking about a huge rush of people. And so this industry fits well because we're talking about a distributed workforce. We're talking about the workforce of the future. Our act requires your headquarters to be in Bermuda and your mine management controls to be in Bermuda, but the rest of your workforce can be in other places. And so we hope that that will not happen, but we'll certainly be vigilant against it. But we want people who've come to Bermuda, and historically we've seen, whether it's the insurance industry, whether it's other parts of financial services, that they donate to cause of Bermuda, that they do things and they help to educate. So the number of scholarships that have been done from the insurance industry that have made sure that so many young Bermudians have careers in insurance right now. There's very few countries where you'll have students that are in primary school that are basically saying, I want to grow up to be an actuary, but you find that in Bermuda, and that's why we're different. And soon, hopefully, we'll say, I want to grow up to be not just a programmer, a super programmer, a cryptographer.
Yes, cryptographer, for sure. Thank you for your questions. We have time for a few more questions, if anyone really... So we'll come to this gentleman at the front, and then the lady just behind him is straight after.
Hi, my name is Jason. I'm a member of parliament, a legislator from Taiwan. And I've learned a lot from the Bermuda's model. And actually, some of the legislations that I wrote is modeled after Bermuda. So it's refreshing. Here you say in person, and actually some of my friends have landed in Bermuda, so I want to salute to you. The speed that your country is operating on is making us all feel ashamed of our latency. But one thing I do want to ask you is how do you deal with AML and KYC compliances? It seems to me that a lot of the jurisdictions are battling this problem, and it seems to me that a lot of banks are refrain from working with a lot of crypto companies for this very reason. Thank you.
Excellent question. I thank you very much for your praise. I used to have a joke when I was in university. I had a very good friend from Taiwan, and I said that she was from the Rock. So that's where you're from, the Rock, the ROC. But from the perspective of banking, banking is certainly a challenge. And banking is a challenge because, especially in Bermuda, because traditional banks don't want to put their entire, I would say, their correspondent banking relationships at risk due to what may represent a small portfolio or a small size of business in their overall portfolio. And so we are working to try to solve that problem. As I said, we have made amendments to our banking legislation, which allows banks to specifically serve digital asset companies, which are not served by traditional banks. And I'm not allowed to make announcements here. I wish I could. But very soon, it is hoped, as soon as next week, we may be able to be making an announcement for a bank that will be formed and issued a license in Bermuda that will be banking crypto companies. And so that is something we've been working on. And a lot of people will talk about, the young lady who asked the question earlier spoke about other island nations. One of our drawbacks is that we don't have a very diverse banking sector. There's only 4 banks in Bermuda, whereas other countries have, 10 or 20 or 30 banks, and you'll find one bank that's willing to take on the risk. Whereas for us, there are very large banks, they can. But we now believe that we're at a place and we've been working very hard. And once we are there, then you will see the full speed ahead insofar as marketing the jurisdiction, because we'll be able to provide what no other jurisdiction has been able to do. Yeah, but it's a difficult one, and banks need to know the source of funds or the use of funds, and it's hard.
I feel like you got a scoop there. Maybe you want to move to Bermuda, I don't know. Think about that. Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Emma. I have a marketing and business strategy blockchain company. I listened with interest in May when you did your announcement at Consensus, and it was really great. Thank you. And one thing I wondered was, how are the residents of Bermuda taking to blockchain? Are they signing up for courses? Are people trying to learn more about it in the university? I was curious, how's it being perceived there?
That is an excellent question, and the answer is with a fair degree of skepticism. But it's no longer skepticism, and I will explain. When you are in a country that's had a challenging economy, and you see, the leader of your country always at these various events, whether in New York, whether, in Switzerland, all the rest, and wondering what he's out there doing, it's just kind of like, why is he spending all his time on this? The skepticism changed when we had companies that started advertising for jobs in Bermuda, and people were like, oh, this is real. I can actually have an opportunity to work inside of this industry. So that's what's changing. About the approach which people have had, we've offered people to sign up for programs. People have taken advantage of that. We are then giving them the opportunity. We're paying for any type of online courses of which they want to do to upgrade themselves, and we're looking to send a small cohort away because we want to make sure that the companies that can come, initially they're going to need to import their talent. I'm not going to say that overall they're technical talent, not the compliance talent, not the finance, not the back office, not the accounting stuff, because we have lots of that already in Bermuda, but the technical talent. But we want to make sure that we can upskill our workforce so that that technical talent will be there. So they are signing up, and we are making sure that we are paying for those persons to get reskilled and upskilled.
Perfect. I was concerned about job formation there, so thank you for answering.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for your questions. Now, I'm really sad to say our time is almost coming to a close, so we can probably fit in one very quick question. Over here, please. We're going to have the mic over here.
Hi, Patrick Martin from European Media Finance. My question is
Hi.
regarding digital asset exchanges or crypto exchanges. Do you have any registered in Bermuda, and do you have plans to launch some in the future?
Do we have any exchanges that have been licensed under the laws of Bermuda? No. And as I said earlier, that there are persons who say they want regulation, and when they see what regulation looks like, will choose to go somewhere else. That has not yet deterred us, however, because we know that there are people who are looking here. The banking is a particular issue, but once we solve that problem, we know. In addition, our Bermuda Stock Exchange itself is looking at what they can do inside that space. So to answer your question, are there licenses that are registered, or are there exchanges that are licensed in Bermuda as of yet? No. Have applications to the Bermuda Monetary Authority been made? Yes.
As that was so short,
Thank
I
you.
might push my luck and squeeze in one more. Any more questions for the Premier? We'll take this one from the front here. Anyone else, just to make sure no one's missed out? Okay, if we have time, we'll come to you, sir.
From the perspective of cyber law, cyber security, and blockchains, how do you rate Bermuda's legal frameworks? And are you planning to do something to attract more on these three fronts?
I am biased, but I will say that we're the best in the world. And we're so good that there are legislators in Taiwan who are copying our legislation as we speak.
Good
That
one.
much being said, we are a center of regulation, and people are welcome to look at what we have. But our Digital Asset Business Act, for companies that are going to be licensed in digital assets, has a very strong suite of cybersecurity rules, and they have to be audited by an independent firm to be verified. So from that perspective, we think that we're on the right track, and as I said, it's a very high bar to pass. We're not saying that it's a low bar. We're not trying to play the quantity game. So it is not easy to comply with the level of regulation which we have, but we believe that's the best way to protect our reputation. So you're more than welcome to go ahead and take a look. You can find it on, shameless plug, forgive me, fintech.bm, but it does have all of our legislation at fintech.bm.
I feel like we should have got that on the board somewhere.
If you want to tweet to me, you can do at Bermuda Premier, if you
we go.
want to.
Yeah.
I want to make a bid to win the BBC mug.
Oh, please.
So-
Yes,
so
you can judge this.
This is not a comprehensive definition because we've run out of time, but a blockchain is a type of distributed ledger technology that is highly scalable, incorporates trust-building mechanisms that are called validators. There's all kinds of proofs, proof of work, proof of stake, proof of authority. But what I believe is that decentralized business models are growing. The use case scenarios are documented here to stay. And I encourage you also to adopt blockchain for good models, as you know, Consensus as a portfolio.
So we'll give it to the room. Who thinks that was jargon-free? Who'd like to have a go? Yeah, go on. Say that into the mic. Say that into the mic.
You can see all the apples, but you can't make them into oranges.
Well, that must be a joke. Okay, one more up here. You can judge. You can judge these.
It's a new method of accounting that's faster, safer, and easier.
That's pretty. That's pretty getting there. Quite general. All right, one more. One more over here. Come on. By the way, I have to find this mug because somebody has picked it up from next to me.
All right. So blockchain is a social coordination tool that allows us to trust the system instead of each other.
Oh, well, what do you think? That was quite good, right? Any more for any more? One more. Okay. None of the ladies making a bid
I didn't see you hiding
here.
back
What?
there, Tim.
It's the decentralized trust and truth machine.
Decentralized trust and truth machine. Okay, okay, yay, he's got it. We just have to find this mug now. I think it's somewhere back there. Someone picked it up.
Yeah, I think Kevin.
We'll find it.
I'm sorry, but decentralized has to be a buzzword.
Yeah, it is. It is a little. I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for all your fantastic questions, everyone. Thank you for your time. It's been wonderful. Please do.
Priya, first, I want to thank you. You've been an excellent interviewer, and I thank you very much. I also recognize the one Mr. Joe Lubin standing over in the corner. Joe came to Bermuda for the first time in October. I hope that he'll be back. And it's a pleasure for Bermuda to be working with Consensus. It's a pleasure to be here in Davos. And as I said, for any of you that are interested in learning more about Bermuda, yes, you can do fintech.bm, or you can speak to Dennis. Where did Dennis go hiding? Right here. Dennis is next to Joe. Yes, absolutely. Oh, Dennis is right there. But it is really great, and the work that the Consensus organization is doing, incubating wonderful companies and bringing them to market, involved in blockchain for good, and making sure that we have responsible systems for the future is something that should be applauded. So I just want to thank you, Joe, for your vision and your leadership. You still there, Joe? Oh, he's gone.
He's there.
I just want to thank you for your vision and your leadership, Joe. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.